microphone. Would be handy. Hi, Jimmy here, and you might be expecting me to jump into this as a rant. After all, so many YouTube videos that debunk things end up being rants. I've done a couple of rants myself, but I think it's important here to show a little respect because the origin of what we're going to talk about today, I suspect, is somebody being rejected, possibly by mainstream academic research, and that kind of rejection can sometimes lead people to feel, to use a modern colloquialism, butthurt, which then leads them to to denigrate, to insult mainstream academics. And I know a lot of academics who work in universities, so we're not going to just rant at this because that fuels this fire of feeling of injustice that people have when they come up with what they call alternate history theories. So what we're going to do is be respectful. Now, this alternate history theory is the theory that a race of people called the Chymry fled ancient Egypt and came with the semi-mythical figure Brutus to the island of Great Britain thousands of years ago and became the Cymry. I am a Cymro, I am a Welshman, and this theory has no basis in reality or any real evidence beyond misidentification and misinterpretation of historical sources and fabrication of sources. But people who believe this have started coming into some of my comments. And when you come into my house and you try and spread this stuff, this fiction, that will generate a response from me. You have triggered my trap card, so let's take this apart, shall we? Now, the purpose of this video is to critically assess and dissect the theory that Old Welsh is cognate with ancient Egyptian. I can't believe I've had to say that out loud, but this theory has become known in some fringe quarters as hieroglyphics, which doesn't really work, but anyway. The theory here is that you can very easily read hieroglyphics if you know Old Welsh and have an Old Welsh dictionary, which I happen to have. The best Old Welsh or Welsh historical dictionary we have is the Geiriadur Prifysgol Cymru, the dictionary of the University of Wales, which has for decades now been doing really, really good research. They've got more than 2 million reference points for the historical definitions that they have. So, before we go any further, I want to thank Lauren. Thank you so much, Lauren, who is one of our amazing patrons for the channel, who has helped me do some research this week through a migraine headache, through feeling really poorly. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Diolch o galon. You're amazing and you rock, and you're the best sort of person. Now, the research for this video has involved me going into some older parts of my brain, because I'm not an Egyptologist. Hold my hands up there if we've got any Egyptologists, Old or Middle Ancient Egyptian linguists, Old Welsh scholars who want to contribute anything in the comments, please do so respectfully, but I have basically had to open up the dusty undergraduate notes I took in Egyptian archaeology and basic hieroglyphic stuff that I did at undergraduate. And as soon as I started to look into this theory, unfortunately, it started to fall apart. The example that's generally used as the opening gambit for this in newspapers in Wales and in kind of the adverts for the talks that you can go to if you pay, is the example of the goose hieroglyph, geb, often used to mean the syllable geb, the sound geb, I believe, in ancient Egyptian. In Welsh, the word for goose is gwydd. A gwydd is a goose. Welsh words have more than one meaning, is the theory presented here. Therefore, you look for the right meaning to match the hieroglyph, using your dictionary. And the word gwydd is similar to the word gwydd. The word gwydd is the root word for terms like gwyddoniaeth, science, and also gwyddel, meaning Irish, but we'll ignore that meaning. And the basic logic of this theory, and stay with me here, is that gwydd means information, science, knowledge. as in gwyddoniaeth. The goose hieroglyph, therefore, always refers to wisdom or knowledge when you see it in hieroglyphics, because hieroglyphics are cognate with Old Welsh. Now there's a series of problems here. The root word for gwydd is not the same as the root word for gwyddoniaeth, which any Old English or which any Old Welsh dictionary would be able to tell you. The hieroglyph for goose does not mean wisdom whenever you see it. Geese are not traditionally associated with wisdom in, I don't think, any culture, and generally it's referring to a stumbling gait, being drunk, fishing, pecking at stuff, but not wisdom. That's just the first opening sort of this proves that this works theory. And it's already crumbled. It does not work. The second kind of introductory idea is the idea of the shadoof. And you may be familiar with a shadoof. A shadoof is a water lifting device, used all over the world, believed to have been invented either in Mesopotamia or possibly in India. It was in use in Egypt 3,500 years ago. A very, very old device. The word shadoof, according to the theory of hieroglyphics, is Welsh, meaning a water sack. Now in Welsh, the word for sack is sach, from the Latin saccus, meaning, well, sack. The word for water is dwfr in Old Welsh, dwfr. In modern Welsh, dŵr. Shadoof and sach dwfr kind of almost sound similar. Unfortunately, I've not found any reference in any actual use of the term shadoof that has a r sound in it. And a very important sound in the Welsh word for water, there are only three, is the r sound. Dŵr. In Old Welsh, dwfr. If you swap those letters round and you have dwrf, then kind of sach dwrf or sac dwrf would work. Sac dwrf is not sac dwfr, which is kind of what it would be in Old Welsh if you do Old Welsh wrong. The word for water in ancient Egyptian, by the way, happens to be mu, which is much closer to the modern Arabic word ma. And if you wanted to say water sack in modern Arabic, it would be kis al-ma. The ma, obviously, being related to the Egyptian mu, because it is an Afro-Asiatic language, not an Indo-European Celtic language. Hi, Editing Jimmy here. I'm just making myself a cup of tea during editing, and I've just remembered a couple of things about this that I forgot to mention. First is that, in part, this book, there's a book, claims scholarship for its own, for things like the idea that there's more than one vowel in Egyptian, and that vowels do exist in Egyptian. We've already known that since the 1820s. That knowledge is 202 years old at this point. It's not news that there are vowels in Egyptian, it's not news that the vowels are written down in Egyptian, but sometimes the vowels are not written down. And that is a basic misunderstanding on the author's part of how the scholarship has developed. Just thought I'd insert that in there. Ugh. So again, as soon as you pick at that, it falls apart. Which is unfortunate, don't get me wrong. I would love it if we could prove that Welsh, that Cymraeg, that my language, which I speak every day with my family and my colleagues and my friends, was 4,500 years old. And we have, for example, a couple of examples in pictures of the Pharaohs. The idea is that the flail and the crook, which you often see crossed over the chest of the Pharaoh, represent something. We don't actually know what it represents. The crook, probably fairly obviously a shepherd of their people. The flail, probably I will hit you if you disobey. But according to hieroglyphics, it means heddi ka. And heddi ka is supposedly he who shall have peace, which is kind of close to hetuch kaf, or hetuch kaf, or heduch kav, which would be closer to the Old Welsh. But The crook in ancient Egyptian is called a heka, which just means a crook. So whenever you see a shepherd's crook by this logic, in hieroglyphics, it would mean peace. That's not the case. The flail in ancient Egyptian is called a nechacha, or a nekaka. Now, nekaka, or nechacha, is very different to necheuver, which according to hieroglyphics means without violence. I have failed to find the word chewver in Welsh, also cheurf, also cewrf, also cewver, as meaning violence. Trice, yes, for quite a long time has been used to mean violence, but not chewver. So, na chewver, meaning without violence, as far as my research goes, doesn't seem to fit. We also have a few other bits and pieces here. So we have things like the word for the right of a pharaoh to rule, the ma'at. Ma'at has that glottal stop in it, as far as I've been able to tell from my research, which is imperfect. This is related to the word maith, meaning nourishment or feeding in Old Welsh. But it's not. It doesn't sound like it, and it's certainly not spelled like it. Name for a pharaoh, the sort of the prenomen for a pharaoh, is Nesut Beat, or Nesut Beat, I think, which means king of sedge and bee. Sedge and bee are the hieroglyphs used as part of Nesut Beat. You are the ruler of the sedge and of the bee, of the north and the south, of all of Egypt. According to this theory, it means Nes Ith Bith. Nes Ith Bith would mean kind of near to you for eternity. But that's not what the hieroglyphs mean. The hieroglyphs don't mean that. They mean Upper and Lower Egypt, or they mean a sedge and a bee. And Nes Ith Bith is very poor use of Welsh. This is all falling apart at the seams. The other claim is that hieroglyphs were used as a common tongue, that you would be able to look at a hieroglyph and immediately be able to tell what it was, that it was not a language of the elite, which goes completely against a lot of the scholarship that's been done on them. There is also a claim that they weren't used as letters. Now, they were used as letter sounds. They are also used as letter sounds in the Cymroglyphics book, which contradicts itself, like we said, but they are also used as logograms, ideograms, as symbols meaning more than one syllable. So, bit, geb. They could be used as single sounds, a, ch, e, and they can be used as words in themselves. So they could mean, a cloak could mean a cloak. A cloak could mean a fold of cloth, for example. Hello, editing, Jimmy here again. Sorry, there's just so much to this. Basically, what is trying to be said here is, if you take a definition of a word in Old Welsh and you misapply it to a hieroglyph, it gives you the meaning of that hieroglyph. So, the heron hieroglyph, right, in Welsh is creir, crechir in Old Welsh. And the meaning of a heron hieroglyph in Egyptian is a harp, or a heron, or a letter of the alphabet, a letter sound. The Welsh word for harp is telyn, which bears no resemblance whatsoever to either the Egyptian word banu, which means heron, or the word for harp in Egyptian. So it doesn't really work there either. I know, it seems baffling, doesn't it? And yet the bafflement is another tool of pseudo-history. Basically, if you're baffled and confused, the idea is to just blind you with science. It's just to go blah, 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 blah. Look at all this stuff. Doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it make sense? Say yes. Say yes, it makes sense so that we can move on. And that's basically what they do. until you're like, oh yeah, I guess it makes sense, because you're too blinded by it all to challenge it. The key here is you cannot challenge this theory. This theory is perfect and you should just accept it. As soon as you challenge it, you are either part of the corrupt mainstream and you're scared of it, or you're just misinterpreting it. So we have a variety of unsubstantiated examples of words with meaning. Olivide, for example, meaning a successor. Olivide, as far as I can tell, means olives. The idea that llew, lion, in Welsh, means abundance. No evidence of that. The idea that madras means place in Welsh. Again, unsubstantiated. The idea that segan means cloak in Welsh. It doesn't. I'm fairly sure you're thinking of the Latin word sagum, not the Old Welsh. And that this in ancient Egyptian means established or permanent. Again, things like... this is all unsubstantiated. If you have any knowledge of Welsh language and etymology, none of this makes any sense at all. There is a review of the book on one of their videos, which says, Genir llyfr erbyn hyn, llawn camgymeriadau yn anffodus, which means I have the book at this point, unfortunately, full of mistakes. That's a comment in Welsh on one of the videos for this book. Now, I'm trying to be respectful, and those of you who know me will know from the sound of my voice that I'm holding in a lot of anger right now. And yes, this theory makes me angry. I'll go on to why in a minute. But purely looking at this as a theory of etymology, it falls apart at the slightest breeze. None of the words that are Old Welsh work when you try to make them Egyptian. None of the Egyptian words work when you try to make them Welsh. The goose example is a prime one, right? The shadoof example is a prime one. You have to spell things wrong, you have to misunderstand etymology, you have to conflate word origins in order for any of this theory to work. And if you have to make stuff up or willfully ignore things for your theory to work, your theory doesn't work. Hi, Editing Jimmy back again. What I think other Jimmy, presenting Jimmy, we still haven't worked out a name for him, is saying here is this is a classic pseudo-history tool, technique, if you like, where you have to use this one old source of this information. Any other newer source of the information is corrupted or unacceptable or misleading to you. And that is a classic pseudo-history tool, because basically any of the newer scholarship disagrees. So like if any of your theories are debunked anywhere in any further scholarship after the 1680s, that is basically your terminus post quem. Like you cannot use any sources from the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, 2000s, 2010s or 2020s. Because if you do, the theory falls and shatters. And we've already proven with the goose and the shadoof parts of it that this theory, it already shatters like sugar glass at the merest hint of a challenge. So yeah, basically that is a classic trope. And this makes me angry. Theories like this make me angry because they're dangerous. It's not true. Ancient Egyptian is an amazing language and culture. Old Welsh is an amazing language and culture. You don't need to try and force one onto the other to make one of them look better. We don't need this. My culture is already amazing. It's already a 2,000-year-old living culture. We don't need you. We don't need you to force our culture, spelt wrong, pronounced wrong, and done wrong, onto an African culture from 2,500, 3,500, 4,500 years ago. At its best, this is misleading and misguided pseudo-history. At its worst, this is racism. A predominantly white culture being forced onto a predominantly brown and black culture looks bad. And I know that this is being made up because the people making it up have been rejected in some way. They feel bad because no one accepts their theories. But, like I've just shown in what, less than 20 minutes? The theories don't stand up. Even to the lightest prodding from me, some guy with a master's degree from several years ago. I'm sorry to have to say it. I really am, because I would love us to have Old Welsh from 4,000 years ago. But the truth is, we don't. So, thank you again to Lauren for helping with the research on this video. Lauren, you're amazing. I really, really appreciate it. Diolch o galon, thank you so much. And yeah, may the blessings of Osiris go with you. May you... I don't know. I was going to do a kooky Egyptian-related thing to end the video. But also, the idea that Ra is cognate with Hail. Just stop it. Just stop it. If you want to pursue a rabbit hole, tell me why Welsh and ancient Greek have basically identical grammar structures and a weird number of nomenclature connections. Riddle me that if you want to figure something interesting out about ancient languages. That blows my mind every time I think about it. So, diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio, diolch yn fawr iawn am wrando. Thank you very much for watching, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Till the next time, tan y tro nesa, hwyl am y tro. Bye bye for now.